Kyla Bryant, what's up?
What is going on, man?
How are you? I'm glad we could like sit down and get to shoot the shit a little bit and connect
Yes,
and hear some wild stories and what you got going on.
yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm
Hell
excited
yeah.
to
All right,
just
so as always,
mm,
everybody's got to give us a wild, crazy story to kick things off. So you can go back to like club days, you can go college days, you can go coaching days. What's something you got?
okay. So I'm gonna take it to club days. So my parents were those type of people who like they did the whole driving the hour and a half, 2 hours to practice. Like I
Oh,
was one of those kids that like seriously was very committed. And so for the longest time, I lived about an hour and a half away from my club gym.
okay.
Every day I was late from school, every single day. And so as a coach, you can't just let the kid just stroll in there just like it's normal. You
Right.
could and so my coach every day I would have like 5 rope climbs every day and just would like knock them out. But it's so funny because it made me like just be a freaking menace at rope climbs. I would just like knock them down. He'd be like, "How many is
Totally, totally.
5?" Boom, knock it out in like 10 minutes. And then I had another time where like I ended up moving gyms and to somewhere that was maybe a little bit closer. And I had a mental block, and one of my coaches made me do 40 rope climbs,
Well, hot damn. Yeah.
40. And I did all 40.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of wild, but it's all right.
Well, the five probably prepared you for the 40 at that
Yeah,
point.
well, like I mean, the first like 15, I was like, okay, yeah, like I got this. And then after that, that's when I was like, I'm hurting. Get me.
Did you want these today, this
I was
week?
like, how
Like,
long? Right. Like, do I have a time limit on this? Like, I don't know what's going on. And I was
uh,
like in junior high at that time. So,
that's
man, yeah,
wild. That's totally
pretty wild.
wild. Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, so I want to kick things off. So kind of like where we were semi-chatting through messaging like on Instagram about like the post that I had the other day about like what like people fear. I think that's just like a good place to
Yeah.
start. It's like most people like I always say is like most people really aren't that scared of failure. They're scared of like what people will say about them if they fail. It's the fear of like the judgment behind that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so yeah, let's go down that rabbit hole. Like especially now that you're into coaching too and like how you like have to have those conversations in terms of like helping kids understand it's like yeah, I get you're worried about failing, but really it's like if no I always say it's like if nobody's in the room you probably wouldn't care, right? Like if you fell off the beam and like nobody's in the room like you wouldn't care, but like if you did it in front of 10,000 people all of a sudden like it's a big ordeal.
Yeah.
So like yeah, like why did that resonate with you and just like how you like have those conversations nowadays? Yeah, let's go down the rabbit hole.
Well, I mean, I think it resonated with me more because I was like, fear and confidence can't coexist.
Right.
They can't coexist. You're either one or the other. You can't fully be like petrified of like, okay, if I fail at this one thing and it doesn't work out, you can't feel that way. And also be like, I got this, like this is no
Yeah.
problem for me and I'm fully prepared for this. And so something that I've kind of tried to do throughout like my coaching style so far, because you're right, I am starting out just like this is my first season as a collegiate coach. And so I'm starting out with like figuring out, okay, what's my coaching style in particular? And like, how do I, right, get these 20, 17, 18, 19 girls to, to basically have no fear,
Yeah.
um, or to get them to a space where they're like, okay, like I got ice in my veins. And so I think that's why it resonated with me because I was just like, yeah, like trying to teach people how to do that and like even just coming into that and my on my own is like been a journey of kind of taking because I used to be a pretty I wouldn't say fearful kid, but like there was a time in my career where I right before like my freshman year of high school where I just was like had no confidence. Like I was
Mm.
mental blocks to the nines. Like I was just like
Wait, so the
just
swag wasn't always there?
no, the swag was not always there.
What?
Yeah. So for about yeah, right around like my seventh, eighth grade is when I started to be like, okay, like I'm about
So
that
what
life.
was, yeah, like what was the tipping point for
The
you?
switch,
Yeah.
man, I'd grown. So I'm from Georgia, born and raised in
Yeah.
Athens, Georgia. And I had always wanted to be like this badass collegiate gymnast. And I just seen so many young women who like were not only just awesome on the floor, but off the floor. And
Yeah.
they were just role models, man. And I knew I wanted to be that. And I around eighth grade was when I was like, you can't be that and be scared. Like you
Yeah.
can't. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to flip the switch. And it was not easy by any means. Like I had to cut people off. I had to cut out concepts like that, things that made me fearful. I had to kind of just do a deep dive of like what were the things that made me afraid, or what
Hmm.
was I afraid of? Like, okay, you afraid of not making it? Okay, well the only way you won't make it is if you don't try.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
give 110%. And so, and everybody always knew me as like being the one that kind of was just always a go getter. And I worked hard, like at the end of the day, like I was the hardest worker in the room. Um, but when push came to shove, I didn't have the confidence to, put up or shut up. So when I was around, yeah, eighth grade, I was like, okay, Kyla, like you gonna have all this talent, do something with it. And I had a coach that was one time, she literally looked at me and she was like, you have been given a gift and it will be taken away if you don't steward it properly. And I was like, it was like dagger to the heart. Cause I was
Yeah.
like, holy crow, like, yeah, I have been. And I do have all this talent and I do have all this like confidence inside of me and I'm not using it. I'm burying it. And so I guess with, yeah, full circle moment coaching styles, I'm like just trying to teach kids, don't bury what you got. Don't do that. Like, because that's what
Well, it's
people, yeah.
yeah, totally. And it's interesting too. I always like it's funny that like you remember basically like one sentence like from a coach too. Cause like I think like as I like I guess am coaching in my own realm, like in the athletic world of like always keeping that voice in the back of my head of like one sentence can literally make or break somebody. Like, but it can also take people the other way too, right? So it's like being mindful of like how you language things, how you word things, because it can send people down like two drastically like different
Yeah.
routes.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, you're either speaking life or you're speaking death.
that's good. Yeah, 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 totally.
You're speaking life or
Totally.
you're speaking death. Like it's like there's no in between. There's no
Yeah,
gray.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think
Yeah.
figuring out too, and I'm sure like you, maybe you can touch on this too, is like now that like it like getting into actually I'll ask you without giving, like what would you say is like now that like you've really dove into coaching is like the most important aspect of it in terms of like finding your philosophy, creating the most impact, getting
Mm,
people to understand like what they're actually capable of. Like what
yeah.
would be that major piece for you?
Well, I have like it's funny you asked that because right when I got to campus, actually Jordan had me sit down, and she was like, "You need to
Are we
come
on
up."
an interview again, Ryan? Like, what are we doing here?
She was like, "You got to sit down and like come up with like what are your beliefs about excellence? Your beliefs, like my beliefs about excellence."
Yeah, yeah,
Me, it looks different than you. It looks different than, Joe Schmo. It looks different than Nick Saban. It looks different than, Kirby Smart. So, but for me, it kind of came down to integrity,
yeah. Okay.
encouragement, and passion and honor. Those are the four. Those are the four that I will die on my hill on those four. Integrity, honor, encouragement, passion. Because you can't, like, as a leader and as somebody who is you're leading essentially we have 17 athletes on our team,
Right, right.
3 team managers. You're leading 20 girls, 20 young women. And like you have got to stand on your own standard. And
Yeah,
so that's something that I've always honed into, but I really have since I've been coaching. And then as far as like honor is concerned, like always just giving weight to others, giving weight to their time, and giving weight to what we do in the gym, what we do outside of the gym has been something that I've just been like really trying to press into the girls. It's like what you do here is not in vain, and what you do outside of here is not in vain either. It can be if you don't, make the right choices, but that's something that I've tried to press. And then with encouragement, I've always just been the person who's like, try to dig the gold out of people. If you
yeah.
have to try and claw your way there, do it. But like, I have always just been like, you got to try to dig the gold out of everybody. And then with passion, it's been like just do everything with your whole heart and have freaking fun. Like if you not having no fun, if you wake up for work every day and you're dragging and you're like, I don't want to be here, you don't need to be doing that. Like
Yeah.
that's not for you. So, and it's not even like the oh, days are hard because obviously that happens. But like I wake up every day and I'm like, I love my job. Like, and I love what I do. Even on the days that I'm like, I'm not like, I'd rather be sleeping right now. Or, like
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
something like that. But it's the stuff that makes you want to get up out of bed. And so those are like my values that I've held as far as like my coaching philosophy is concerned as well, too.
It's interesting. Like right before we jumped on this, as I was reading something. It's actually something that I'd posted. It was like one of those like Facebook like memory type things, and it's something I'd
Sure.
posted, I don't know, like 6 years ago. And it was basically like a reminder to myself of like, do you have a job or do you have a career or do you have a calling? And so it's like I think it's like the same concept, right? Is like, are you getting up to just go to do the thing to like collect a paycheck? Are you
Yep.
doing it to like just to like help others? Or like I always say is like my analogy for them is like I'm not going to give you anything new. You already have doors inside of you that are just
Yep.
unlocked. My job is just to like show you the key. Like show you
Yeah.
like here's the key, like you go unlock the doors. It's like I'm not teaching you anything that you don't already have. And so
Yeah.
I guess I would like label that more into like the calling aspect of
Oh,
it versus just
I
like
am. It's really funny because my whole life I never wanted to coach. If you would
I was
ask me,
actually going to ask that like how
man, if
like
you
what
would have
was
asked me
the
that, Ryan, I don't know how many times people ask me that my whole life. You don't want to coach? You want to coach? And I would just be like, no. And it wasn't because I didn't love gymnastics. It wasn't because I didn't love the game. And that I didn't understand the game. Like I was just like, no, because I didn't think that you could put your passion with a career. I didn't think those things coexisted
right,
for the,
right.
or that they could coexist.
But okay,
Come
so
on,
major
come on,
point.
thought.
Major point. Let me ask you
Yep.
this.
Come on.
Do you believe how do I want to ask it without giving away like my own opinion on it? Like, do you believe that people find their passion?
I think no. Most don't.
Okay. So what's your take on it? And then I'll give you like my 2 cents.
Okay. So right before I got this job, because this is my calling for sure. Was you? I think in a lifetime, I think you have multiple callings. Like for
Okay.
me, one of my callings is coaching. I think one of my callings is, eventually being a wife, being a mom, like stuff like that. Um, Being a mentor. Boom. Um, but before I got this job, I literally tried everything.
Like
Like
what? What all did you try? What'd you throw against the wall?
commercial real estate and investing. I was an accountant associate while I was in school. Um, Dental school. So I was like on the trajectory of going to dental school actually right around the time where I was like,
Mm.
oh, do I want to pursue gymnastics? Do I want to go completely the other way? Commentating, ministry, full-time ministry, like vocational.
Yeah.
I lived in the Dominican Republic for a hot second and did that whole bit. And then I was like, he don't want me here in the jungle. It's okay. It's all right. Um, and then and then like event planning.
Okay.
So I had like probably six or so things that I was just like, I just didn't say no. If I felt like it was a good thing and that it was like utilizing a something that a skill set that I had, I was like, okay, I'll try it. Easy. Because right when I knew I was supposed to coach because right when I finished nationals, the one and only nationals I ever went to, whenever I tell people that, they're like, how? That's a story in itself. Um, but the one and only nationals I went to right when I got in the car after becoming an All-American and that whole bit, I looked at my coach and I was like, I think I'm supposed to coach. And she was like, take your time.
Yeah.
Don't hop. She's like, it'll always be there. And I was so angry with her initially because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I never say that. Like, I think I'm supposed to do that. And she was just like, go try other things before you do that. And I did. And I'm so thankful I did because right around, I think the moment I knew that like coaching was something I needed to pursue fully, I was commentating and I felt like the thought came in my mind, you're in the right building, but you're not standing in the right spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, okay, all right. And then I was just like, well, I'm gonna have to withdraw from dental school. I'm gonna have to not do all these other things, and I'm gonna have to just pursue coaching. And I think that not enough people, going back to fear, people are afraid to do that. People are afraid to, you know how scared I was to tell my parents, yeah, not gonna be a doctor, probably not gonna go into corporate world either. I am gonna be a college coach though.
Yeah.
After going to Stanford, like
Yeah. Yeah.
they're like, what? And I think too many people care about what people think about them. That's why they don't pursue their passions. I think too many people care about the no's because
Yeah, that's
I
a
got
big
a lot
one.
of no's before getting this job too. So like I think people are just they're too afraid of what the outside world thinks and
Yeah.
they don't listen to okay, what are the things I'm actually passionate about and what are the things I'm willing to fight for, I'm willing to sacrifice for. Because I really did. I was like, I'm about to sacrifice like this whole dental school bit and commentating and doing all this other stuff for my passion. And I'm so glad I did. So glad I did. So yeah, Ryan, that's my take on it.
Well, okay. So before I like go into is because I want to talk about like the getting no's. I was talking with a coach yesterday, the day before, um, about this too. The concept of like taking risk, right? Like that was like the concept of like where we were coming from and the like not just in taking risk in the gym, but also like outside of the gym. I think of like the being okay with like taking no's. And it's like I had a coach, like my own personal coach, um, mentor, I guess, like asked me one day, he's like Ryan, like, do you know without a shadow of a doubt, like if any team, like if anybody ever hired you that like hired you on, like would you get them a result? Like would you help them get from point A to point B? I was like, without question. I was like, then you are doing them a disservice by not reaching out to them. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
there was kind of like an oh shit moment of like
Yes.
99% of the people, 95 are probably not going to respond, like not bring like whatever the things are. But like
Yeah.
you have, if you know, like in your heart of hearts, like what you're doing is the appropriate thing, then like, yeah, like you have to be willing to like lay it on the line and like tell people,
Oh,
like, get the emails back of like, bro, take me off your list already. I'm like, okay.
yeah. Well, like even so right when I was like, I'm gonna do it, my dad was like, well, how do you even know you're gonna like, because Jordan was the first person I reached out to.
Mm.
So I was like,
Did y'all have a relationship prior?
yeah. So well,
Okay.
kind of not really. Like we knew of each other,
Right.
just through like college gymnastics and the whole her being at UCLA, me being at Stanford bit. But I knew that I was like, that's probably the staff that I would feel the most cohesive with
Mm-hmm.
because of that. So I was like, okay, cool. But like that was like literally would texted her on a prayer and was like, all right, cool, let's get it.
It's okay
But
if you tell
like,
me no, I swear.
no, but like my dad was just like, how do you know you're going to, how do you know that this is something that that's gonna work out? And I was just like, I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
I'll be damned if I don't try.
yeah.
Like I was just like, I'm gonna just try because I knew that I also had there are a lot of people like in the gymnastics community that I love and honor and respect and that I have good relationship with. And so I had enough to be like, okay, I'm glad that I have these types of relationships with people because even if I don't get anything out of this time around, it will get around at some point. It'll shake
Yeah,
out us.
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
just had to be okay with that. And then I also had to have backup plans because I was like, well, if none of it works out, that's cool. It's not the time. But we got plan B, C, D, like just trying to make sure, like, okay, how are we going to hustle? Like, how are we going to get this to work eventually? Because it's going back to that, my coach being like, you have a gift and you
Mm-hmm.
not need to bury it. I've always known that, but I think, especially since graduating now, I think I'm more in tune with that because I'm like, yeah, there's
We like to use the word mature.
just a little bit razzle mature.
Life experience.
Yeah, like it's just like I'm over here like just do this.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, but that's just been something that I was really I remember another mentor right before I really started kind of dialing in on like the search process and like what would I need to be a great coach? Um, I was like, well, I could do this and I could do that. And I'm telling my mentor all these 500 things I could do. And she was like, you need to be quiet and pick something. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I was like, yeah, that's great advice. She was
yeah.
just like, you're everywhere. And I think, yeah, not enough people like to just hone in on one thing. Like I
Well,
had
and
that.
I think too is
Yeah.
it's partially a woman thing, and it's probably partially like a gymnast thing too. Is like the more like I'm around and involved. I actually literally text this to another coach yesterday. It is like I was like, just so you know, like I had a coach once tell me this, and it was like, Ryan, a mediocre plan with action will always beat a perfect plan with no action, right? And so like so many times like we get caught like sitting down like trying to devise is like, okay, I'll pull the trigger when, right?
Yeah.
Like and like when this
Oh,
perfect
so good.
moment comes versus just being like, okay, like I kind of got it, but I don't really know. Like we just kind of see, and then so like let me
Yeah.
go figure it out. Let me start making some phone calls, and then just kind of like
Yeah.
see where it goes from there, and just like start puzzling the pieces together from there.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I've always there's a thing that I have actually on one of my walls. Like I have these little sticky notes that have like cool sayings on them and just things I just want to remember. And one of them is faith is action is preceded by having faith, or like faith precedes action. Or action, yeah, whatever it is. I'm trying to think of the terminology. Basically, if you have faith for something, you believe in something, you need action to precede that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
that action has to follow that. Like
Yeah.
you cannot just be like, okay, well, I believe this can happen, and then just like sit with your hands and like kind of twiddle your thumbs. You can't do that. Like you'll be like you said, you'll always be waiting for, well, this will be the perfect moment for me to do that. And I can do that. I can only do this then. And it's like you'll be waiting forever if you think that there's a perfect time for something.
And like, yeah, and I think too is like in conversations with like with athletes as well, is I always ask them, I'm like, what do you believe is actually possible? Like, what do you believe? And they tell me all these things, and I'm like, okay, like, but action follows belief. And so like you don't have action behind that. And so to me, it's like you don't actually you
Believe.
think you believe it, or you're trying to convince yourself you believe it, but like you're not actually pulling the trigger on anything. So it's like
Yeah.
you're kind of just on a like I call it like a hope, a wish, a want, right? Like
Hmm.
you're just praying for things,
Yeah.
so to
I call
speak.
it you selling dreams.
Yeah, 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 totally.
Selling dreams. Because it's like, you're not going to do anything about it. Or are you going to do anything about it? Is always the question. Are you actually going to like be about it? And I think that that's something that I've even just seen like with my athletes, like it's just been like they're just about it, like day in and day out, they're just about it. Um, and just even how I conduct myself, it's like if somebody were to look at me, they need to know, like I want them to be like, no, Kyla is about that life. Like she
Hmm.
will do if she says she's gonna do something, she will do it. Um, and she'll have a plan to do it. And that might not be like you know, I might not move like super fast, but I might like get the plan together, just get organized, and then move whenever I feel like it's like, all right, it's time to go.
Yeah, yeah. Or you can be like me, and they're like, so like, what were your thoughts before that? I was like, I didn't. I just,
That's fine too.
I
Sometimes thinking
just
too much is
jumped.
bad too. Sometimes thinking too hard is like, I mean, I remember that was one of the things like when I was an athlete, I was like, my coaches used to just be like, don't stop thinking so hard. Just do. Don't think, just do.
Yeah,
Just do it.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah. So what was like as you set foot like in the door there, however many months ago? Um, I guess like and they probably like run parallel to each other. So I'm probably asking the same question is like, what was their vision for you in terms of like your role, like coming on in there? And like, what was like your vision? And they're probably similar
Yeah.
of
They're pretty
like,
similar.
this is really like where I feel like I can help you guys get to the next level, quote unquote,
Yeah.
so to speak. Yeah.
Well, definitely more of like the choreographer piece, like definitely helping Jordan on floor. I mean, Jordan's a legend on as a coach in general, but like as far as like her involvement on floor, just like coming partnering with the program and like just taking the performance level to another level. Like everybody knows like that I did that with my own floor team and things like that. And so and my personality in that way. So just bringing my personality into the gym and just kind of having a balance of a staff. Like you got your Jordan and Kylas who are very regimented, very like very poised and like calm as like they are the rocks that the waves crash against and they do not break. Like
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
much
yeah.
like woosah. And then you got me and Chris that are like running up against the wall, like running around like a bunch of ferrets, just like having a blast in a glass, but also very motivating, very encouraging, very not intense, but yeah, I guess just like that fire.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
and so definitely looking, it was more of like the okay, let's balance that out, and then also like let's bring that performance piece in and really like turn up a notch like with this program. And I felt like that was what I wanted to do, and that was what I knew I could do, and I knew I had a knack for choreography. I knew I had a knack for music, so I cut like all the music, and then do all the choreography and stuff like that. And I knew I had like a serious like that was just where my niche was.
yeah.
Um and I was like, all right, let's get after it. Let's do it. And then also with that, like getting the technical piece of it with actual, gymnastics and not just the dance. And so coming in and learning that too, because like they also know like, okay, she's like still new to this, but like
Right.
she's coming along and just being a sponge. And so that was kind of like what that was the vision, and I feel like that's what's getting achieved.
Yeah, for you coming in from like from day one, I guess, of like setting foot in there, like what was your primary focus of like with the girls?
Man, just to be like a mentor.
Yeah.
Just somebody that's like, I trust this person, has my best interest at heart on the floor and more importantly off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like something that my dad like actually used to always say is like athletes compete for their coach
Mm.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah, yeah.
compete
At
for
some
the
level.
team,
Yeah.
but they turn up when they know like my coach has my back too. Most of the time it's like, right, you compete with your team and for your team, but like they compete. There's something that happens when you have an encouraging coach. You see that with Deion Sanders right now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and the
totally,
way that
totally.
he's conducting his athletes right now. Like they believe in themselves on a whole other level because this man is constantly pouring into them. And so that was something that as a coach, I was like, I need to do, like, period. Just across the board. And people need like that was the type of coach I wanted to be. It's such that I want to be, that I strive to be every day. Is the kind of coach that's like when push comes to shove, my athlete feels like they're up back against the wall, like I'm right there with them. So that was kind of where I felt like my goal with coaching was, and like when I came in, I feel like it's a process. I think I had to learn that too. Like I've only been here 7 months, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I understand it's a process and it's a thing, but there's nothing like the girls are probably my favorite part of my entire job every day.
Yeah.
Just like the way they work, the way they are as people, their hearts, for not only each other, but for their community. It is like something to see every day. They're like this and it doesn't change. They don't shapeshift. Um, and that was something that I was like, wow, like I really got a great group of girls that I work with every day. And so yeah, that was that on that.
So now that you've kind of solidified this idea that like coaching is for you, at
Yeah.
least if you had to answer as of now, like what would be the dream like vision for you? Like is it becoming a head coach one day? Is it like I like my role as like the assistant? But like if you had to answer now, like what the dream vision for you look like?
You know, right? I'm going back and forth on this. I think everybody like wants to be a head coach at some point. But then again,
Here's why I ask too.
but then again.
Like because I think that like it just at least like in my conversations and like in early on, like I do agree with that. Like everybody wants that, I think early on, and then they figure out like
So I was about to get
is
there.
that the right role like
I was about
actually
to
for
get
their
there.
personality? Yeah.
That was so I think right now, like as I'm just starting out, I'm more of like I like where I am. I like being the sponge. And I had one of my mentors was one of the coaches at the University of Georgia for the longest time, Doug McGavin. And he like always used to say, I am good being an assistant coach. Like, y'all got it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah,
have it. You can have a head coach. I'm good. And I never understood. But now that I'm a coach, I'm an assistant coach. I'm like, I kind of get it.
yeah,
But like,
yeah,
I love where I'm at right now, and I'm excited to just keep learning from my staff and from the people around me too. Like, I think I'm just trying to figure it out. But like, yeah, if I could answer today, it would just be assistant coach.
yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, how can I best serve the head coach? That's kind of where my heart would be right now.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think a lot of it's just a different picks a different person. And that's not even like that's head coach of like even dealing with like high school sports. It's not even
Oh
just
God.
college. Like, yeah, it's probably worse in high school because you really have to deal with parents. Shout out to all the parents out there. Um that sit at practice every day. Ugh, right? Like um yeah, I think that like that takes a very, very, very like special, very like I don't know, like direct person
Hmm.
versus like if you have like I would say like my gift in terms of like even when I was like helping out with like wrestling teams and stuff like that, obviously like there is the wrestling aspect of it, but like it is not being organized. It is not like the structure side of things. It was like, oh hey
Oh,
balloons, hey.
hey.
It's not the structure of those things. It's more of like the connection piece.
Hmm.
And as a head coach, it's like you have to really, really, really like draw that line of like where you're wearing that hat with in terms of like being the big brother, the big sister, you
Yeah,
know, for the athletes versus more of like the mom and dad. Like
yeah,
it's one or the other a little
yeah.
bit.
It is one or the other. You can't be both. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Very, very,
Yeah,
very,
it's
very
really
different.
difficult to be both. Difficult to be both. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I feel like I sit right now. Especially like I'm so close in age to the girls. Like the oldest one is 2 years younger than me.
Yeah, there's a
So,
lot of related, and that's kind of why I asked too, is like what your like goal was, like as you set foot in the door, like because it has to be, I would assume, like some level of like connection behind it, of
oh my gosh,
like
that's like
I'm
I'm
not far removed from you.
yeah, yeah. Well, like, and I know that too, and they know it too. And I feel like that's why they like the girls can hopefully like open up in that way because it's like she just got out of doing this thing. Like,
Because the
right.
reality of it is,
Yeah.
even as like you can go like as high level as possible, you can go to like your own head coach there, or like even you know if I'm talking to like a wrestling like it doesn't matter is because in their brains like after you're about 3 or 4 years removed they're like walk a day in my shoes bro like get your
Well, they
like
forget.
that
They
was 10
forget.
years ago like
Right.
like they like don't they cannot mesh the two together
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
and
it's very
so
difficult. Yeah.
like you do have like this like really short time frame and window to be able to utilize that like hey look I got you like I understand
I
because like
get it.
after like 4 or 5 years they're like
You're
bro
like,
I'm like
okay, you don't get
yeah yeah what do they tell like you're on Facebook oh my god that's for old people I'm like 4 billion people are on Facebook like daily like what are you talking about
literally. It's true. It's
um
true.
yeah these kids these days they're a hoot.
I feel like our team is like always teaching me new stuff every day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm out of the loop
Yeah, the
already.
lingo, the language. I'm just like, oh, that's a
Lingo, the language, the music,
the
the
poof.
dances. I'm
Yeah,
like, maybe I'm just so far removed. Maybe I live under a rock, I guess.
yeah. So before you went, like before you moved out there, were you still living in California, or did you move
Yeah,
like
I was
go
still
back
in
home?
California. I was in California. I was just like I said, dibbling and dabbling with everything, and then I was working for my church vocationally for a little bit too.
You didn't want to
For
go
like
back to you didn't
not
want to go back
volunteer.
to Georgia?
I did, but it was like I had built like such an awesome community in California, and it was just a lot easier to just stay there. And then it got a little complicated because of like commentating and everything like within the Pac-12. So I
I was
did
gonna ask, what were you commentating then? Pac-12 stuff?
I was doing so like Stanford meets. I did a Cal meet. And then there was a I didn't commentate this one, but I helped ESPN with like score keeping and stuff like that, broadcasting for like regional meet and did a couple of things like that. I was like doing speaking engagements with some companies from like my friends like who um worked in like the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a couple of things like that. Um and like yeah, it was just my network. I had built it in Cali. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just stay until I, find something else better to do. And my parents were like, it's fine. But like, yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of how
So
I ended up having.
what was your so you said Jordan was the first person you reached out to.
Yeah.
What was your message in a nutshell? Like,
I was
hey,
just like,
hey,
hi,
are
like
you have an opening?
I was just like, hi, like I don't know if you guys are doing this, but like I love like I've so much respect for your staff, for your program, and like if it's something that you guys are into or like interested in, like I'd love to reach out and or like I'd love to talk. And it was
Yeah.
just like super easy and super great and um yeah, it was good. I really was like because I didn't know what to do. Nobody tells you how to become a coach. So like
Or like,
you don't
I
be knowing what's
mean,
going on.
if we really want to go down the rabbit hole of like, I mean, even like to a certain degree, like college doesn't really prepare you for a whole unless you're like really, really, really gonna like if you're a lawyer, if you're a
Yeah,
doctor,
I was
like
gonna
if you're an
say if you're
accountant, like
so
if you're something really, really, really specialized, but like they're like, here's a business class, and then you're like, yeah, but like how do I reach out? It's like I don't know, just go start sending emails.
right, right. Well, and
There's
then my like experience like even at Stanford, like so my major was it's a tongue twister, but science, technology, and society with a focus of communication and media. Basically, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I did it all.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a interdisciplinary major. And so where they teach you like, okay, how do people operate with like scientifically, and then like how does like media affect them, tech affect them, and so they basically make you like learn everything. So I can code in like two different languages. Like I
That's
took
pretty cool.
different cinematography classes and videography stuff, like editing, things like that. Some psych stuff, some sociology things. Like I could start a startup company if I wanted to. Like there's a bunch of
So
different
so a lot of
there.
stuff you're never gonna use.
It's what's funny though, Ryan? You know what's funny though? Some of it I didn't ever think that I would use, but I have
That's fair. That's fair. That's
because
fair.
it's such a broad major.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like I remember being like, why do I need to take a art class? Why do I need to do that? Like for what? Why would I need to take an editing class? And I literally edit music and for a
Well,
living.
that's true. Yeah. 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 Okay.
And I
Fair.
didn't know when I was a junior I would be doing that. Like, I mean, and even just with like the knowledge, like the vast knowledge, like even with like our athletes, like if they ask me a question about something, I might know a random fact about something and they're like,
Well,
what?
you're probably really damn good at trivia. I mean, that's for
You
sure, right?
know, I might be, might
We're taking you to Buffalo Wild Wings on trivia night.
I love it. That'd be I feel like I would be one of those people that's like pretty good at trivia. I like Family Feud. That I'm good at stuff like that.
Worthless. Not like when are you going on Family Feud?
It's literally worthless.
Oh my God. Oh man. Lord, Lord, Lord. But actually, I actually realized like I never answered, but I think we kind of did. Going back to like the passion thing is I always said like it took me a while to like figure this out because I think that honestly, like a lot of like the age range, like that college age range is a lot of the advice they're given is like you just have to like find your passion. It's just like message that's kind of shoved down their throats a little bit. And so I guess like for me and like what I've learned and uncovered through this is, and I just don't believe like you find it. I think it's developed. And it sounds like
Yeah.
that was like the exact like path that you went on is more of like you didn't go on this like sabbatical of like, okay, like I need to go in the mountains and like figure out like what my passion is, right? Like it wasn't a long walk or something like that. It was like, okay. I mean, even for me of like people are always like how did you get into like what you're doing now? I'm like, well, like, okay, let's go all the way back. I owned a strength and conditioning gym. And they're like, wait, what? Like, how did that lead to this? And I was like, well, then the conversations. And it's like it just steered me down to this path of like,
Yeah.
okay, like here we are.
Yeah. Well, you have to be okay with things not being linear too.
Yeah, that's a good way
That
to
was,
put it. Yeah.
and that was where I really had to like swallow. Once I swallowed that, I was like, all right, we can figure this out. Because like I think people oftentimes they're more concerned with like, well, I have this major, so I have to do this, and then this has to be my passion. It's like you literally hate what you do every day. Like, no, but I'm so happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
sure? Like, I think that people also they they kind of right, like kind of look at things like they need to be so linear and like it has to go exactly to a T when it doesn't. Like it's just like no, it can be messy. I think that's like once I got okay with things not being linear and then life being not so scripted and not so scheduled, which being a student athlete kind of it doesn't set you up for failure in that way, but it does like because you learn how to be on a schedule, but it's like it does set you up for failure right when you graduate because you're like, oh, like I can't just when do I do this? Like the first month, 2 months after I graduated, I literally one of my friends had to sit down with me, she and her husband. They sat down with me because I was like looking at my schedule and I was like, I don't know how to fill this. I don't know what to do. And they were like, well, you can fill it with whatever you want. I was like, when do I work out? And they were like, what do you mean when do you work out? Like whenever you want. And I'm like, okay, like when do I need to do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
And it was just like they were like, oh my gosh, like girl. But so many people rest in that. And then and that's why they go into stuff that is not necessarily mundane, but they don't pursue their actual passion. Slash they don't know because they think that it's like it just is supposed to go be linear. It's like you said, it's developed. Like it's not something that you just wake up one day and you're like, I'm gonna go do this. Like I'm sure you weren't like, I'm gonna start this podcast because I somebody told me to go do it. Like it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
were like, I like talking and I'm pretty good at it too. And I know a lot of people. Like it just happens like that. Like it's not and then it's something that you're like, what am I going back to my thought of like, what are you willing to sacrifice for? What are you willing to invest in? And I
Mm,
don't think enough people are willing to do that because it's freaking scary to bet on yourself. Like that's scary to bet.
totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, but
And
yeah.
I think too is especially like with like using like the college major and degree and like getting a job is they settle for something because in their brain is like, well, then I would have just wasted 3 or 4 years, so now I have to do the thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, like it's not like that equals that if that's not like if you learn that like that's not the thing that
Right.
wasn't what truly like lights you on fire. It's like I always ask people, I'm like, you know, like how happy does that make you? Like on a scale of like, 1 to 10. And they're like, well, like it's like an 8. I'm like, okay, so like when you get married and somebody's like how much do you love that person? Are you gonna say 80%? Because everybody's gonna be like,
Right.
this, ooh,
Right.
I don't really know about that one, sir.
All
Right.
of it.
But like that's what people do like with their careers.
Yes.
Like it's not that bad. Like it's
Yes.
80%. I'm like, yeah, but like you're talking like the next like 50, 60 years of your life
Yes.
potentially.
Yes.
But and again, like you said, betting on yourself, scared to take like the leap of like doing something different or
Yeah.
doing what they want versus your parents wanted you to be a doctor or
Yeah.
a lawyer or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I know I've talked to somebody in the past is um they went to PA school and they were like I don't really know and I was like you don't have to do it. They're like no like I'm like hundreds of $1,000s like I'm in debt like like I paid to like go do this right like because
Right.
you had to go and so it was like this like I feel like I have to. I'm like but like econ 101 like that's a sunk cost like you can't factor that into the
That was
equation.
something I factored
Right.
in with dental school because I was like, I'm graduating from my college debt free, and you mean to tell me if I'm 70% on this thing and I gotta put how much money? No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm good on that. I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
good. Yeah. And I think like going back to your point, and I tell people this all the time. I did a talk last year. I was on a panel, and they quoted me on this, and it was like, pursue the things that set your soul on fire. You need to go do that. Whatever
Yeah.
that is. And everybody has something that is like that. But like pursue the things that set your soul on fire. Like do that thing. And if it might not be conventional or what everybody thinks you should be doing, but like
I'll
you
say
can
this too is a lot of times is like you're very unaware of it. I'll give you an example.
totally.
One of my long time like mentor, she's my first
Mhm.
like mentor and so she had me do this exercise and like she pre-scripted it. Um it was I had to send this pre-scripted email to like 10 parents. And at the time I was like running a strength and conditioning gym. And so like that's kind of like what I was doing. So it's basically like long story short, in the email, it's basically like, tell me what my superpower is. And so it's like you can like really help to understand yourself and like the way that others perceive you of like
Yeah.
why that they're paying you, why they're giving you money.
Yeah.
And I emailed 10 parents. And as a strength and conditioning coach, not one parent mentioned anything about physical training with their child. It was all about like their mind and like
Yeah.
what I still have the emails and like one of the moms was like I don't know if like you're like if you took sports psychology or you're like a psychologist or like whatever,
Right.
but she's like the way that like you've helped my daughter like see the world differently and just shift beliefs and like the way that she sees herself and like all the things. And so it's like
Wow.
that helped me understand of like more towards of like what I'm really good at. And
Totally.
so you know what I'm saying is it's like
Yeah. Well,
even
you need people also to be able to, like you said, point it out.
yeah.
Gotta have people who point it out. Because yeah, I mean, there were people all leading, like all the maybe 6 months leading up to me accepting or like, yeah, accepting the job here. People were not even probably longer than that, probably like not 10 months. People would just be like, "Oh my God, you've been such a great coach. Do you coach? Like, you have such an eye for this. Do you do this? Because you can do that well." And I was just like, "What?" Like, but even before that, my whole life people had asked me like, do you want to do that? Because like I think you'd be one hell of a coach. And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I never. And like at the time, I was like, no, like never thought about that. But you're so right. Like you need people to be able to like, because you're right, you can't see it for yourself.
Totally. And I
But
think
I
that's
think,
where like it's getting people to be honest too now. Like I'm fortunate I have some now of like even like with the teams that I'm with of like asking those kids. I'm like, this is not a self-fulfilling like prophecy of like tell me what I'm good at. I'm like, I need to know. So it's like I can double down on those things. And also I need to know what didn't hit, what didn't land, what confuses you, what's not good. So it's like because if it's really important, like I got to figure out how to relanguage it because you have to
yes,
know that.
for
Or
sure.
if it's not that important, it's like, okay, like screw that. Like we'll just take it all out. Like we don't really
Yeah.
need it. I just thought it was important. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think
And
like
that's the
getting
thing.
people
Like,
for that feedback.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. And like also just knowing like, okay, what is it that like I just don't want to do? Like I can't with this. Like, this is not good for me. And I
Totally.
think like I said, I think a lot of people they just don't want to do this stuff. It's like or like they're like, "Oh, I want to be a vet." And then they go to vet school and all this stuff and then they intern or whatever and they hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
But that's where like I think too is like especially at that college age, I'm like And again, as athletes, they give you like all the excuses, some valid, most not, of like now's the time to like literally try everything. Like
Yeah.
don't wait until you're done to start trying things, because that's where you just kind of like fall into the trap, because the first thing you're like,
Yeah.
all right, this is not that bad. It pays the
Yeah.
bills, it does what I need it to do.
Yeah.
Versus like use those summer months of like, again, if you want to be a vet, like go ask somebody like, hey, like, can I shadow you for free for a week? Like, just
Yes.
let me just be at your hip pocket.
Like,
Like,
yeah, just like let me sit in your shadow and just do it. Like, cause you that then at least you don't waste the time
totally, totally.
like,
Yeah.
to
No.
figure out if it's something you want to do or not.
Yeah. All right. Last
And
question.
all right. Also, I'm gonna grab my charger because my laptop is literally on 10%. That's good. We love that.
So this will give you all right. So last question. If you were in a stadium of 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. Hmm. I'd say excellence isn't achieved overnight. It demands intention daily.
Ooh. Ooh. Pulled one out. Did you have to look on the billboard for that? I'm just kidding. That
I
was
did.
good.
It's something that like it's part of my like philosophy on excellence. And it's just like it's not achieved overnight. It's something that's developed, something you have to walk through daily.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and to like have grace for yourself within that. Because to me, I think that when you realize it doesn't happen overnight, you can have grace for yourself on a daily basis to like be like, okay, I'm learning this new thing and I'm, tending to this thing like each and every day. And like, how can I get 1% better in this way? And so, yeah, that's what I would leave.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, dude, I appreciate you jumping on. I appreciate all the conversations, the laughs, the stories, and maybe we do it again sometime.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. This has been
Absolute.
incredible.
Hell yeah. All right. Until next time, everybody. Peace.
Peace.